Councillors, we move to item 9.1 and Councillor Natoli, the M2M Cycleway, notice of motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I move that 1, the Council acknowledges and supports the community's opposition of the proposed nominated route of Stage 6 of the Mooloolaba to Maroochydore M2M Cycleway, which is currently out for public consultation. 2, further Council supports the community's position on finding an alternative route. 3, Council seeks to extend the consultation period and ensure that public forums are included in the consultation with the community. 4, Council acknowledges that the Beach Matters Group is a key community stakeholder and should be involved in the consultation process. And 5, that Council will not support Stage 6 of the project proceeding until an alternative route is identified and supported by the community. And Mr Mayor, before we call for a seconder, I'd like to amend the 5th dot point.
Sorry, you can't
include.
I'm sorry, you can't make any amendment, Councillor, at this point.
At this point, but if I have a seconder, I'd like to.
Mr Mayor, as it's a notice of motion, it has to stand as notified, Councillor, so you need a seconder before it comes onto the floor, but you won't be able to amend it yourself.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Councillor Dixon, thank you. Carry on, Councillor.
What I was hoping to include is just some clarity in terms of item 5, and that was really about the project not proceeding to the construction phase. So it's really about an indication of not proceeding to that construction phase until we actually have an alternative. Councillors, we've just been re-elected, and most of us, the existing councillors may have been involved in the M2M Cycleway or other parts of the Cycleways, but obviously as new councillors who have just been elected, and in particular for myself, Division 4, this project was known. It's been out for public consultation since September, but there was very little information out there. In fact, there was no plans out there. And that's been one of the issues, I suppose, is the fact that we've been so busy, we've had forums, we've been engaged in a process of induction, and at the same time, not being able to be briefed about Stage 6 of the M2M, not being informed that we're going out to public consultation, is difficult, because obviously this is a baptism of fire for us in terms of being thrown into a situation where something has gone wrong. And in this particular case, you know, I have to commend the community for the way that they've come out strongly and indicating to us that something has gone wrong and they want to be heard. The community acted incredibly quickly. The Beach Matters formed, and within a few days they had 800 people line up on Alex Beach to demonstrate their concerns about the proposed cycleway and the route that has been put before them. And, you know, it excites me to see the community react in this way, because it's them demonstrating their right, as they did during COVID-19, they came out and they decided to vote and nominate who they preferred to represent them. And that's the result, that we are all here because of that. And under, again, COVID-19 restrictions, they came out into the public and showed that they really want to have a key say in what matters to them in their local community. This is the grassroots approach in terms of what our responsibilities as councillors in understanding and being in tune with our community, and know that sometimes things do go wrong. It's not catastrophic, doesn't mean we have to stop everything, it doesn't mean that we're going to walk away from things. It means that we have to pause because we've reached a part in the road that is a roadblock. That's all it is. And we need, as locally elected representatives, the voice of the people, to stand with our community and find a way around this blockage. And that's exactly what the community asked me to do. Bring this motion to council to support them and find an alternative route. So trying to analyse this, what went wrong with the process, I think the issue is that TMR, who have basically got carriage, but they're in partnership with council. This whole Cycleway is a partnership between both TMR, state government, and the local government. They brought on a community reference group in September, and out of that reference group, there was probably, out of the 11 members, there were 7. It was stacked with cyclists. Now, this is not something that I think was done intentionally in terms to have a particular interest group that overrides the interests of other members and key community representation. I think it was inadvertently done because TMR want to build a cycleway. And of course, you have cyclists that sit on a community reference group. It's logical. And so having that group then work through a plan, and that plan that they had became the preferred option, one option only that went to the community. So until recently, when it finally got out to the public consultation phase, was the first time that I had seen, the community had seen what was being proposed. And we saw the reaction of that community was sudden and swift. You have to ask yourself a number of questions. Is why did they only go out with one option? I've had discussions with our council staff last Friday, my first briefing. There were a number of options, but they chose only to go out with one option. You would think through public consultation, you give choice to people, and the people then decide what they believe is the best option for them. They didn't involve a large section of our community. They didn't consult with the disability groups in terms of the impacts of having cyclists come through that area. So why did the community react the way that they did? You know, talking to those people on the beach, they all talked about lifestyle. And I've always asked myself, what is the definition of lifestyle? We talk about it all the time, but we try and get our head around what lifestyle is. And so I went and researched that, and I found that lifestyle typically reflects an individual's attitude, way of life, values, or worldview. Therefore, a lifestyle is a means of forging a sense of self and to create cultural symbols that resonate with personal identity. A lifestyle is a means of forging a sense of self and to create cultural symbols that resonate with personal identity.
Ollie, you're on time. You want an extension?
Yes, please.
Someone prepared to move? Councillor Cox, with a seconder. Councillor Johnston. All those in favour? Carry on.
Over decades, these members of our community that have used the beach, the surfing community, have forged a deep connection to place and history. The connection is cultural and as much as it is spiritual to them. The beachside car parks, the park right beside it, the beach and the waves are all part of a ritual, one which has a strong heritage value attached to it, and that's their definition of life. Every weekend when I walk past there, I see them. They need these vehicles to bring their boards, bring their families, bring their beach gear. They take their boards out, they put it in the parks right next to the car. They wax their boards, they put on their wetsuits, and they safely then move towards the beach and to the waves. That is the connection that I think this group has missed. They've missed and haven't respected the fact that we've had these people use that for such a long period of time. And for them, It is about everything that they've invested in their community, their lifestyle, their choices. And to be honest, they don't want that to change. This is what TMR and the Community Reference Group didn't understand and take on board. It's about the public engagement process, failing to understand the critical elements of who is going to be impacted by what they had proposed. They just didn't get that connection. But one of the things I see this as a great positive is that with the 800 people and more people, I think Fiona Simpson put out a petition, 2 days, 700 people signed that petition, is that we now have a large portion of our community that feels that they are disconnected and disengaged. They are now engaged in this process. And for us, the opportunity is to take them on board a journey and work with them. That's my role. That's our role as elected members, is to work out a solution that they don't lose out, the cyclists don't feel like they lose out, and the pedestrians, they have a deep appreciation about how that area works and how we can end up putting through a cycleway that respects their connection to history and their connection to their culture, and that everyone throughout this process can end up with a solution that we can all live with. And that's what I hope that this resolution, we need to be able to stand firm by our community and say that we are listening to them, that we are prepared to work with them, and they have indicated strongly to me that they want to see a solution that will allow a cycleway through here. This is not about them wanting to stop this process. This is about finding a way forward. And it's incumbent upon us, councillors, is to acknowledge our community and support them in finding that solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. Councillor Oars and Councillor Natoli, I won't be supporting the motion in its present form. I'd like to bring to your attention a joint media release issued earlier today by the Minister for Transport and Main Roads, Mark Bailey, and myself, announcing the extension of the current consultation period for the Stage 6 M2M Cycleway for a further 6 weeks until July 31. The Minister, importantly, also agreed to more direct engagement, exactly with the people who Councillor Natoli is referring to, and other interested community members during that extended consultation period. Councillors, I took the opportunity to ring the Minister and speak to him directly for 2 reasons. The first of those is that I believe, as a partner in the project, the smaller partner I might add, it's incumbent on Council to ensure he is aware of the community concerns that have been generated in relation to the proposed design and route of Stage 6 of the M2M Cycleway. And I can assure you the Minister was well aware of those concerns. He noted the strong support from the community that Councillor Natoli referred to and their demonstration on the beach recently. And he's aware of those concerns, notwithstanding that this is currently the second round of consultation that has been undertaken on the project. Now, clearly, you could argue that's been impacted by the COVID-19. However, I want to make the point that the Minister is quite genuine in his interest in getting the project right. In fact, in his own words, getting it into a shape that people are more comfortable with is crucial. He was more than amenable to extending the current consultation period by a further 6 weeks, and his department engaging more directly with the community members impacted, particularly once the next phase of the COVID-19 restrictions come into effect on 13 June. And more people can be engaged on a public basis. For that, I wish to acknowledge and thank the Minister on behalf of our community for his understanding and willingness to work through these matters. Councillors, I want to maintain a productive relationship that gets results and that are ultimately in the best interests of our community, and that's where I share Councillor Natoli's objectives as well. But I think being prepared to work with the government who after all is the major funding partner and is contributing $6.7 million for the project. You don't get, I don't think we get anywhere by berating them necessarily. In fact, my experience is that that ordinarily, or in the past, has sometimes left us with nothing. The second reason, and this is a really critical reason in my mind, and sometimes, you know, the real purpose of these things can be lost in the debate, and that is that the second reason I spoke to Minister Bailey yesterday is I wanted to discuss the safety considerations associated with the project. Interestingly, public safety is something that has not featured very much, if at all, in the disclosures that have been occurring, in the discourse that has been occurring around this matter in the last week or so. I fully appreciate that the solution that is ultimately delivered here must balance the interests of a range of stakeholders: cyclists, beach users, tourists, and disabled and other local residents. But I'm also conscious that along this stretch of Alexandra Parade, there are issues of public safety that a project like this has the capacity to respond to. Who here has driven along that stretch and not seen someone darting out between cars on the western side of Alexandra Parade to run across the road to get to the beach or the park? There have been lots of near misses. I'm sure many people would appreciate that this is a dangerous behaviour for pedestrians as well as for vehicle drivers. I'm informed by our staff that since 2001 there have been 216 accidents attended by police on Alexandra Parade between Buderim Avenue and 6th Avenue, with 3 fatalities, 2 of which have been in more recent years and have involved pedestrians. With our forecast growth and the visitor numbers that our region enjoys outside COVID-19 restrictions, these incidents are only likely to increase. So public safety must also be a key component, if not the key consideration in any solution ultimately arrived at for this project. The progression of this project and the continuance of our support should not hang solely on whether one group within the community supports the end product. Our community should and must be heard, and that is why I sought an extension to the consultation period and more direct engagement with some of the keenly interested stakeholders. But there are a range of considerations here, all of which need to be worked through. Finally, I want to make the point that giving ultimatums only generates a risk that the funding commitment from state will be reallocated elsewhere. There are many projects around Queensland at this time that are no doubt sitting on the Minister's desk crying out for funding. I know from our own experiences here just how hard it can be to secure suitable funding for our region. So I'm not going to be party to jeopardising any existing funding commitment by issuing threats and ultimatums. By all means, we must advocate on behalf of our community, and they must feel we're advocating on their behalf. But I think what I've been able to achieve by working with the Minister over the last 24 hours, along with his willingness to respond, is a far more productive approach and one that is more likely to deliver a better result for our community generally. Thank you. Councillor O'Prey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, with that, I'd like to move an amendment to Councillor Natoli's notice of motion, and it's a little bit of a detailed amendment, so if I could just read it through to you. If we could please start with that council dash. 1, remove that council, acknowledges, remove and supports the community's opposition and put in the community concerns relating to the proposed nominated design and route. The design element's very important there, of stage 6 of the Mooloolaba to Maroochydore M2M Cycleway. Remove, semicolon, and then remove which is currently out for public consultation. 2, take out that council, encourages all interested community members to take advantage of the extended community consultation period to 31 July 2020. 2 should read, encourages all interested community members to take advantage of the extended community consultation period to 31 July 2020, to put forward their views and to work with the Department of Transport and Main Roads, to put forward their views to work with the Department of Transport and Main Roads, on possible solutions that seek to balance community safety and the needs of all interested parties, semicolon. Semicolon and. 3, support the Department of Transport and Main Roads. In ensuring there is appropriate and direct engagement with key community stakeholders on the final design, it's important as well, councillors, the final design and route for stage 6 of the M2M Cycleway. Final design and route for stage 6 of the M2M Cycleway. Full stop. And Mr Mayor, if I could get a second, hopefully I can get the councillor's support on that one. Please.
You're happy to second, Councillor Landsberg? Thank you.
Councillors, I fully support standing with the community on this. Joe, you've made some excellent points there today about community, the wellbeing and the elements of this project across Alex Parade. But this amendment to your notice of motion is exactly what the community is seeking, and this is exactly what the community needs. All right? We need to coexist harmoniously with tourists, cyclists, recreational cyclists, mums and dads, mums with prams, wheelchairs, people with dogs, even with cats. I don't care what are walking up and down there with the skateboarders. We need to make sure that we're all coexisting down there. And I'm very supportive of council getting onto the department and making sure that this is right. We've got to get this design right and make sure that everything about it is in the interest of the entire community. Clearly, with the Mayor's discussion there about the media release, and I've just noticed that it's on the Sunshine Coast Daily website as well, that the Minister and the Department are prepared to work with the community and with the Council. And I fear that if we go in hard and whack them with a stick, we're putting at risk that $6.7 million, which is a greater project than just the Alex stretch. And I don't think anybody in the community wants to see us put at risk the $6.7 million. It's hard to get, it's hard to come by, and I don't want to see us lose that in any way, shape or form. That said, we've still got to be firm and fair. And I reckon that's what this amendment's all about, being firm and fair. Mr Mayor, I think I've made a few notes here, but seeking to work collaboratively with the department is about getting the community to the table and about making that conversation readily available. And the introduction of the July, 31 community consultation process, I encourage the community to get on board, have your say on this. It's critical. But let's not whack them with a stick straight away, Mr Mayor. All right, let's give them a bit of time. Let's get the community involved and let them have their say. This amendment is absolutely 100% about working towards the best possible outcome for the community. Consult, consult, consult's been our mantra for a long time, and I reckon this is a great step forward in that process. This amendment that I've made is very clear, it's very concise, it's not clunky, it's timely, and more importantly, it's all about community. And councillors, I really do hope, and even you, Mr Mayor, I hope you support this amendment today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Prey. Other speakers? Councillor Landsberg.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, and I'd like to also acknowledge and thank you for taking the initiative to contact the Minister. I think it was a very timely meeting to have a chat to him. Definitely I acknowledge Councillor Natoli and obviously the support that you're receiving from our community up there. I've personally witnessed the change in this along the esplanade there over the last 30-odd years. It is definitely a sensitive area of our Sunshine Coast, and you may call them the silent majority of local beach users, our families, our surfers, everyone from And surfing community is, as a whole, encourages everyone from our blockies and bricklayers to our architects and town planners. We all share that special space of the beach foreshore. But most importantly, we do have to look at other modes of transport, and I am concerned for the amount of accidents that have happened along that stretch of road, and public safety is paramount. I think this amendment that Councillor O'Prey is putting forward I'm happy with that, and hopefully I'd like to see Joe continue with his part with these community consultations and take an active role in this, which I'm sure he will. But in terms of not affecting the whole process and keeping this funding going, and it is an important part of the coastal pathway in terms of the whole M2M Cycleway, I think it's a great initiative from Council that with the connection with state government, and we need to keep that going.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Councillor Cox.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and through you. I just want to echo something that you said earlier about working collaboratively with the state government, the Department of Transport and Main Roads, because ultimately this piece of infrastructure sits along their controlled space, and Council is only a minor player in that space. I also just wanted to compliment Joe on bringing forward this notice of motion on behalf of his community. Reading through it in the last couple of days again, there were points that were sort of starting to grate with me and where the community wanted to go with this. I think you've done a good job in compiling it, but the alternate motion that's been proposed by Councillor O'Prey, I think is probably more in keeping with where Council needs to be with this particular matter. Now, I just wanted to touch on quickly a couple of specifics with this area. It's used heavily by the surfing community. There is the cycling community, both the recreational and the commuters. There are so many pedestrians in that area, especially the fitness walkers in the mornings and the afternoons, as well as local residents who want to enjoy that foreshore area. So last night I took the opportunity to speak with a committee member of the Alexandra Headland Community Association just to find out what their thoughts were, and clearly they had concerns over the loss of parking near the businesses as well as the safety of those pedestrians along that area where the cycleway was proposed. I know that I surf quite a lot with Councillor Landsberg along that section, and it's very uncommon for every single car park from the Alexandra Headland Surf Club right through to the Maroochydore Beach car park not to be occupied. It is one of the most busiest spots for surfing, probably on our Sunshine Coast region area, and it is consistently well used and well occupied by that space. But I also just wanted to touch on the former stages of this project, especially when Council, I was newly elected at the time, we were going through the process of the stage along Brisbane Road through the Bundilla section. And I remember the Councillor Thompson was the Division 4 councillor at the time, and the uproar that came with the proposed change there. And dealing with that, we sort of worked with the community to come up with, I think, what's turned out to be a really good solution there, because I've certainly noticed every time I drive through there, the usage of that particular separated cycleway has been phenomenal. I live in Kawana, and I know my children can safely access Mooloolaba Beach as a result of that particular piece of infrastructure. And I've really noticed that the families from the Kawana, Minyama areas certainly utilise that piece of infrastructure at a very high rate. So it also fits in really well with our integrated transport strategy, and it supports the increase of our active transport participation. So Taking all that into consideration, and obviously what the Mayor's elaborated on earlier with his address to Council in dialogue with the Minister, I think this is probably the approach that we need to take in this particular matter. Extend that consultation, take in the community's views, and hopefully we get the best outcome for the entire community.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, just a matter of procedure, just to clarify for me as a new councillor. This amended motion, is there any option to further tweak that by putting something forward to Councillor O'Prey?
Councillor, through you, Mr Mayor, the amendment is still at amendment stage, so no, you can only deal with one amendment at a time. So Councillor needs to consider the amendment and vote for the amendment to become a motion, and then the motion, you can go again on that motion once it becomes a motion, but at the moment it's still an amendment.
So Councillor O'Prey couldn't amend the wording as an outcome?
By agreement.
By agreement from the Chair, if it's minor.
Thank you. Just wanted to talk about the issue first before I talk about the motion. So I don't think anyone would argue that a bikeway wouldn't be a welcome addition to the area. And when we talked about safety, we talked about pedestrians crossing the road, and we didn't really talk about safety in terms of cyclists. So more fatalities occur when cyclists are mixing with vehicles, and less fatalities occur when cyclists mix with pedestrians. So moving cyclists off the road is a logical thing. The optimal solution, though, is a separation of all three. And this proposed pathway doesn't really provide that optimal solution. What is the Cycleway's purpose? It's been often talked about in the newsletters by DTMR and also in some media reports that it's for active transport. And what does that mean? Is it families cycling with their children, or is it people cycling to work? And those things have a time-critical factor. If you're cycling to get to a destination for work purposes or appointments or whatever, you're not going to be cruising along the pathway. And that's a different time constraint as opposed to families who may be cycling up the pathway. And with that time constraint comes speed. Now, I note that the DTMR's responses to Fiona Simpson's questions talked about those time constraints and speeds. And so it was noted that by DTMR, when the path is quiet, the rider would cycle at speeds of approximately 15 to 25 kilometres per hour. And when it was busy, they would cycle at speeds that were appropriate to the situation. Now, this is not very regulated, and I'm concerned with the safety aspect of that, with a family cycling down the pathway and a cyclist who's using it for active transport being held up behind that group of people. So the process on how that would work with all of those users together is undefined. The other issue I have is also with community consultation. When initial consultation is boiled down to a single option for comment, it then becomes a process often where it's an inform and defend scenario, where the comments can only be an amendment to what is being presented, not an alternative. And this is where I have an issue with your amended motion, Jason. Oh, sorry, Councillor O'Prey. When there's a single option, comments are made, and then the decision, comments are taken away and the decision is made, which doesn't allow for further interaction and negotiation. And I would like to see with this extended community consultation that the community, all stakeholders, are involved, where they can put forward their comments and an alternative solution is negotiated that includes the investigation of an alternative route, not just restricted to the option that was presented. That only includes tweaks. In terms of negative impacts, when I had a look at the proposal, there was an attempt to make the solution, as you mentioned, to pedestrians crossing the street by having certain access ways across to the other side of the road towards the beach. Now, a lot of these access ways came across and almost directly into the bike path. There's no opportunity for a pedestrian to get out of vehicular traffic and then immediately cross the bikeway. They have to navigate that. So I think there are definitely options within that to address that pedestrian safety.
Your time is up, Councillor. Do you want an extension?
Yes, please. Mr.
Someone happy to move an extension, please? Councillor Babarowski. Councillor Johnston seconded. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried.
I only have a few more points, Mr. Mayor. The other issue that I see with this is the rerouting of the exit south of the Alexandra Headland Surf Club. If there is a safety issue on the beach, any emergency vehicles will have to navigate out of that surf club facility and head south through a car park, which could negatively impact the timeliness of getting that person to a hospital or to further treatment. So that's another negative impact that I see with the proposed cycleway. Funding from the state government is something that we've been talking about for the past few weeks as being something that we're working very hard to achieving and that we receive very little of on the Sunshine Coast. So I would hate to see that funding be distributed somewhere else. But it shouldn't be the overriding factor when making a decision on what could be a subpar proposal. So I commend Councillor Natoli for bringing this motion to Council and that he's requested extended community consultation and wants to assure the community that through this process real change is able to be achieved, that is not tied to just the one option. I'd like to request of Councillor O'Prey if he would consider amending his proposed amendment to include that the possible solutions include a complete alternative route. Thank you.
You happy to do that, Councillor?
Can I speak to Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor, I'd actually like to take it one step further, if I could, please. And in B, I'd like to add on the third line, after main roads, where are we? On all possible solutions that seek to balance community safety and the needs of interested parties. And to Councillor Suarez's point, and I'd like to also draw your attention to the second line of A, particularly that I did highlight the word design. The design will all encompass all options. So I don't know if we really need to change there, Mr. Mayor, but I believe that should cover it.
The design and route.
Correct.
Should cover all options.
Can I just get some clarity on that, maybe through the CEO? Would that cover all options, Mr. CEO, if those words design and route are accurate?
I think we understand the intent, and obviously from this we'll be writing to the government in relation to that, and I take your point, so I will make sure that's clear.
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, I'll take Councillor Suarez's advice on that, and I will add the word all, and I'll keep the design and route. Item 1. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're comfortable with that, Councillor Dixon?
No, Landsberg.
My apologies, Councillor Landsberg. Sorry, yes.
There you go. That's it.
Okay, Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to actually speak against the amendment. I raised the whole issues about the community. In fact, that the reference group and TMR didn't recognise that there was a bigger party to this whole solution, to the whole consultation process. Beach Matters now represents this group, and you're taking them out of point 4, where we recognise them as a key stakeholder. So you're saying here, Councillor, that we want to engage all key stakeholders, and yet we leave it to chance that they actually recognise that Beach Matters exist.
It's included.
They didn't recognise them before that, and the fact that we've left them out of this whole process, they're the ones that asked me to bring this to Council to deal with this. It doesn't express in this amendment that the current proposal, as far as they're concerned, is dead in the water. They won't accept the aspects of having their community disrupted and changed to the effect that the current proposal has. They don't want car parks on the other side of the road. They don't want barriers dividing their community. They don't want conflict points in a whole range of areas. They want a solution that will enable them to have what they have and what the cyclists can use and what the pedestrians can use. That's what they want. And this does not indicate an alternative solution. This does not say that at the end of the process of public consultation, we don't have a situation where they basically say, we've consulted with the community, taken it all on board, but we're just going to continue down the path of the preferred option that we had. If that's what we end up because of this, I'm not prepared to be a part of it. I'm prepared to put my stake in the ground now and support the community and say, the option that's on the cards at the moment is dead in the water. Finished. We need to find another solution, and we need to find an alternative. And we need to include Beach Matters as a key stakeholder that can be there, along with the cyclists and everybody else that the community reference group have been involved with, TMR. But if it's not included in the amendments, then I'm not going to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. Go to Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, what I see as at the heart of both motions is how do we achieve the best possible design to achieve the outcomes that we all need and we all acknowledge are very important to this region in improving our active transport participation rates. Right now it's at 12%, we need to get it to 20%. And that'll only happen if we have the right infrastructure, and it needs to be the right design. As I hear it, the essence of your motion, Councillor Natoli, is that the community are not satisfied that this is the best design. And I think at the heart of Councillor O'Prea's motion is an attempt, well, not an attempt, is a direction to say you need to spend more time listening to the community on all possible solutions, which may lead to a better design. So I don't think you should see this as a defeat at all. I think you should see this as, to some extent, an endorsement of the community's key concern that at the moment they don't believe this is the best design and they'd like some more time to consider it. I think this amended motion does exactly that. I think you should be confident that they're empowered and obviously supported by a whole range of stakeholders. So don't underestimate their ability to argue their case on the best possible design. I'd encourage you to support this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. Councillor Hungerford.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate Councillor Natoli for bringing this forward. What you articulated there in your points relates directly to feedback I've had from members of the community that have contacted. We've all been contacted, and some of those have phoned me to talk to me, and they're very reasonable people. And they articulated a lot of those points. So congratulations for bringing that forward, because you're representing the community. But I'd also like to commend the Mayor for taking the initiative of contacting the Minister to look at this issue, and the Minister's given undertakings there to extend the time and listen to the community. And I think that should be congratulated. The initiative of doing that is very good. But I'm also impressed with Councillor O'Prea, between Joe presenting there and the Mayor presenting it, spoken to the Minister, to come up with this that quickly. I think is pretty impressive. I'm really impressed with that. But I think the essence we're doing here is working collaboratively and positively with partners in delivering a project is the way you get results. And I think that's what this motion is now doing. The Minister said yes, and I'm happy to listen to more feedback, extend the time for consultation, include listening to the community. I think that's a very positive thing. And of course, the wording there doesn't exclude looking at alternate routes, and for all interested community members to take advantage of the extended consultation period, I think it encompasses everyone. They'll have the opportunity to all have their feedback in there, and then we'll look at it again with any changes that come out of that extended consultation. I think this is the positive way forward of working with Transport and Main Roads in delivering this next stage of the project. We certainly need all the expenditure we can out of all the levels of government and positively work with them on doing that. And I don't think jeopardising that makes any sense at all. So I'll actually be supporting the amendment here today and look forward to the results of that when it comes out from that consultation with what changes are proposed for the community, because I would take from that after that consultation there'll be another option put out there or any changes to it for further comment from the community. That would be my expectation at the end of that process, and I look forward to that. But on behalf of the community, congratulations for bringing that forward. That's good stuff, and the Mayor for doing what he can, because the Mayor has better ability to talk to ministers directly, and I congratulate him for doing that. That's very positive. And for us looking for another way of looking at it, but still represent our community and take that forward, and I think this amendment does that, and I'll wholeheartedly support it.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Law.
I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Natoli, thank you for bringing this forward. Just a question at the moment. With the amendment, do you see that the community that you are speaking so well for today would be able to participate as interested community members and their voice be heard? And a second question, do you have the petition, and where is it going to Main Roads or to Council? And what was the wording of the petition, if you have it?
I don't think there is a petition. You don't have a petition?
No, the petition's actually undertaken by the state member Fiona Simpson. That petition is going to the state government. And in terms of the process of involving the community, I think, there is definitely beach matters need to be included in this. I think they need to know that there won't be a commencement to proceed unless there is an alternative solution that everyone can live with. So that's the problems I see with this amendment. It doesn't give that certainty.
Okay, go to Councillor Dixon.
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the opportunity. It's been said many times today, but obviously I also appreciate that you've gone to the state government about this, and also Councillor Natoli for meeting with those most affected. Let's really get to the key issue here. We've got a community, and the community are telling us what they think, and we're hearing from them loud and clear. Not only have they put phone calls and emails to my office, but they've held a public rally and actually turned out. And if you think about it, when the rubber hits the road, you see people who care about things get up and do something about it, and that's what the community are telling us. Furthermore, their local councillor has gone out and done his best to get involved in that, and that's the most you can ask for and hope for. The real issues here are what I would call the government potentially railroading an option through the community as quick as they can. And if we think about COVID-19, it's not really given people the opportunity to get out and express themselves. They're looking, they're crying desperately, asking for the council and the state government to listen to them and be heard, and they're trying their best. When we actually look at the real issues here, we're talking about the history of the Sunshine Coast. We're talking about changing that and moving forward. Well, we need to bring everyone on the journey, and what I'm hearing right now is that we've got a scenario where the majority, I've seen the plans last week, of all the car parks coming out, taking those out. You're turning 2 existing parkland spaces into concrete hardstand car parks. Significant changes to the community. We're talking about adding conflict points with new driveways where pedestrians will be walking, where cars aren't at the moment, introducing conflict points. We're talking about the government going against their own policies. I tried last year to get fencing put down the middle of roads in my area and was told, no, we don't do fences anymore because the state government doesn't allow it, because kids actually run out onto the intersections, climb up the fences and fall into traffic. So the government, again, doing what they tell us we can't do. And I get tired of hearing that. It's good enough for them and should be good enough for us. So there's really, in my view, some strong things that need to be revisited. Looking at this proposal as well, should the government not be removing those fences and putting in aesthetically pleasing outcomes such as plants and vegetation? We've got too much concrete on the Sunshine Coast. Why don't we start to plant and vegetate some of these areas out? All of that needs to be looked at. What Councillor O'Prey is trying to do here is the most diplomatic solution. I get it. I certainly realise that. But Councillor Natoli came to us today with a clear way forward. He's the representative for the area. He's heard from those residents, and in my view, it's been the strongest lobbying movement from a local community I've seen in some time. When I stood here a month ago, I said that I wanted to be the community's representative in council, and I actually wanted to listen to the community. I'm listening to the community today, and for those reasons, I won't be supporting this amendment. I will be supporting Councillor Natoli in every way I can. And in terms of positioning, the government need to know, although we are only 20% of that funding allocation for the project, we're 100% for the community.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. No further speakers. Councillor Law.
Thank you. A couple of points on the overall process, and obviously we need to determine the amendment that's been put forward. I believe that for the Sunshine Coast, for all of the people, it's essential that we achieve a separation of cyclists from cars, cyclists from people, people and cyclists from vehicles. That has to be something that is achieved out of any cycleway, an improvement of this nature alongside what is quite a busy road that has the uses, multiple uses of people in that recreational area. I'd just like to share with you that the data for crashes for 1st of January to date, we've had 3 cyclists killed on Queensland roads so far this year during a period of time when the roads have probably been at their quietest. That concerns me and supports the notion that we must achieve safety. And that's a 200% increase on the same period last year. Also during that period, we've had 12 pedestrians killed on our roads in Queensland, which is a 71% increase on what occurred in the same period last year. Again, during a time when we think there are less vehicles on the road due to the restrictions. So we must achieve those safety items. I would wonder if Councillor O'Prey would consider a slight tweak that in B we are included alternate routes, not just that there would be put forward their views to work on all possible solutions, but we find the word all alternative solutions. Otherwise, I feel there may be an intent here that we just consider all sorts of opportunities, but we're still going to go with the preferred point put forward by the Department of Transport and Main Roads. I'd like to see the word alternate in there to really make clear our intention that we're looking for what are the alternatives, not just have a conversation and an engagement over the proposal from Transport and Main Roads. And overarching all of that, and as noted by Councillor Dixon, we must ensure that we represent the community's wishes. That is extremely important for me, and I think for all councillors. And it seems that this process has excluded, not necessarily deliberately, but there is certainly, from the work that Councillor Natoli has done, a large portion of our community have not been heard, and that concerns me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor O'Prey, do you have...
To it before I close, if that's okay?
Well, you've already
Sure, I've spoken to it, but I
yep.
want actually...
You can respond.
Could I please respond to...
Yep.
Councillor Law.
Yep.
Councillor Law, I hear you loud and clear. And Mr Mayor, I'm actually going to make another little change as well on my own behalf, listening to Joe's commentary before. So, Natoli, if we could please add, after the word possible, and alternative solutions. That should cover you off well and truly, Councillor Law. And I'd also like to add, Natoli, on the second line, all interested community members, comma, including the Beach Matters Group. Now that is exactly what this group want to see. They want to see the community consultation extended, and they want to see alternatives to the design, and that's exactly what I'm trying to put up there today, folks. I'll speak to it when I'm finished, Mr. Mayor. If I could get Councillor Terry's support on that.
Thank you, Councillor. You're happy to support that as a seconder. Well, I think we're at a point where you can... Sorry, Councillor Barbarossa. Please stand.
May I suggest that rather than and, including...
Say again, Rick, sorry?
Instead of the word and, where you've got all possible and alternative, on all possible including alternative solutions.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, we can do that. Thank you, Natoli.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if there are no further speakers, I'm going to go Councillor Dixon.
Just a question through to Councillor Natoli, just on the basis of those new changes that have been put forward. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Dixon. This amendment is moving towards what the community wants, but it still doesn't indicate our strong support that the community must endorse the final solution. Not TMR, not council, not the community reference group, but the community must endorse the final solution. Without having that included in here, it leaves the whole process open to interpretation. Ultimately, what we want is a solution that everyone can live with and win. And I still don't see that in this amendment, where there is an absolute guarantee that an alternative solution. We talk about them, but we need to indicate that the current proposal is dead in the water. Absolutely. That's a position the community have asked me to take, and that's a position I am prepared to support. And so until this amendment...
I think you've answered the question, Councillor, and you're at risk of speaking to it again. Are there any other speakers? You got a question, Councillor?
Oh, question?
Yeah, you can't speak
Okay,
twice.
sorry, that's okay. I'm finished.
Councillor Johnston.
I just have one question. Why are we saying including alternate solutions? Because that's indicating that we're happy with that we could accept the current solution. Whereas if we took including out, it would say all possible alternative solutions.
The word of grammar.
Pardon?
It's
Say again.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, there is a grammar issue there, and it needs to be corrected. I'm looking for advice on the way that we word this now, starting with to put forward their views to work with the Department of Transport and Main Roads on all possible, including alternatives. So it's not right. There needs another word there. On all possible alternative solutions.
Just take including.
Maybe
out.
the word including should be removed.
Yep.
On all possible alternative solutions. I think that's the right word. So take including out, please, Natoli. Let me read that again, councillors. To take advantage of the extended community consultation period to 31 July 2020 to put forward their views to work with the Department of Transport and Main Roads on all possible alternative solutions. That couldn't be more clear. All possible alternative solutions. Happy with that one.
Thank you, Councillor O'Prey. I think we're at a point where you can close, Councillor.
Councillors, thank you very much.
Close on the amendment. Yeah, we're voting on the
closing
amendment.
on the amendment, of course. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just closing on the amendment. We still need to vote if it does become a motion, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that. I guess I addressed this to Councillor Natoli. Joe, I must tell you that the Beach Matters group is a group that's very dear to my heart, and I need to say that a lot of them are my mates. I grew up on that strip of beach. I still surf that strip of beach. I park my car on those 91 car parks that are looking to be removed. I personally do not support the removal of 91 car parks on the Alexandra Parade beachfront car parks. Don't support it. I want to see them there. You're right. It is a bit of it's a lot of nostalgia there. There's a lot of history there. And there's a lot of locals that have used it their entire life, and it's now a generational car park. I totally agree with you 100%. To ask the question, if this is to be a do or die situation at this point in time, is a little bit preeminent, a little bit too early, and a little bit hard, if that's the right word. We need to make sure the community are on board, and that's all community groups, including the Beach Matters groups. We've got to still discuss this with cycling groups and mothers groups and anyone else that wants to get involved. And that's part of the wording that I've made very, very clearly on there, that all groups, including the Beach Matters groups, need to be consulted on this. And I'm encouraging them on their first paragraph, encouraging them to put their thoughts forward by the 31st of July. Councillor Joe, I don't know how more we could do this. I know that my mates in the Beach Matters group and others that aren't even in that Beach Matters group would love to see this. And I know they would love to see their local councillor support it as well. Mr Mayor, I don't know if I can make it any clearer. This is about community consultation. The mantra of local government: consult, 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 consult. Councillors, I think you're crazy if you don't support this, because that's that in spades. Absolutely in spades. In fact, if I could write up there, consult, 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 I would. Mr Mayor, this is exactly what the locals want to see. It's exactly what the community want to see, and I absolutely hope and support that this council will get behind it and get out there and encourage the local community to have their say and get their thoughts to the State Department of Transport. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Prey. We'll put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Law, O'Prey, Hungerford, Jamieson, Johnston, Cox, Landsberg and Babarowski. Those opposed? Councillor Suarez, Dixon and Natoli. The motion is carried and the amendment now becomes the motion. Sorry, the amendment is carried, the amendment now becomes the motion. Are there any further speakers?
You need a second, Mr Mayor.
Someone prepared to second. Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. If there are no further speakers, I'll put the motion. All that. Yes, yeah, no. I call for further speakers.
I'm encouraged that the Minister is willing to work with the Council and the community to find and give them the time, and that hopefully we can find an alternative. Our community did want us to be able to put a stake in the ground and say, this is the term that we want. And that term is that the current option that is on the table has to be removed. That has to be a clean slate in terms of where we move forward. And unfortunately, I didn't feel that the amendment actually indicated that. It had all the components that the community wants, and I agree with you, Councillor Prey, it has that. But it didn't have that one thing that says, when the going gets tough, we're there with the community and we're there no matter what. Funding or not, there is got to be an alternative solution presented and supported by the community. And I meet with TMR tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to start that process. This is really about making sure that we don't end up with outcomes that destroy the values of what our community want. Because the amount of growth and change that our community is experiencing is challenging the very reason why they made the decision to move here in the first place. And everything that we do impacts on their lifestyle, on their choices. And ultimately, when they speak, there is a point in time where we have to accept that we've got to take a hardline position. And that hardline position may not be as palatable to other levels of government or bureaucrats that don't really understand how community works. That's our role. We were elected to represent our community and understand. And what we don't want is to see the massive changes, because it doesn't just impact the beachgoers, it impacts on the residents, it changes traffic flows, conflict points. There's a whole range of things that are wrong about the current proposal. And at this point, even talking to our officers last Friday, I'm not even aware of that they can actually tell me what the functionality of this bike and cycleway is. Because we have to take this cycleway from River Esplanade to Mary Street. And it's going to go on the Esplanade at Mooloolaba. And there's not going to be any high-speed cycling going through there, I can tell you that now. Placemaker, the people working on that have said it is a slow-speed environment through there. Massive conflict points in terms of people that use that area. And then when you get to the Alex Surf Club, again, another massive conflict point. So this cycleway is not for the commuters to get from Mountain Creek to Maroochydore, because it won't suit their needs. Even our officers have said that the commuter riders are still going to stay on the road. You're going to get from A to B quickly. You're not going to go through areas where you virtually have to come to a slowdown point that impedes that travel time for them to get to work. So, councillors, I hope that this motion will get the desired result that the community want. Because if it doesn't, we destroy all the intrinsic values that are embedded and rooted in our community and with everything that they are attached to place and to history, to culture, heritage values. Once you destroy it, it's gone forever.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. I think we're the amendment obviously is now the motion. Do you want to wrap up, Councillor?
And thank you for the debate and the discussion today, councillors. Clearly a hot topic, and clearly this is a step in the right direction. I know that Councillor Joe would like to see more, but where we stand at the moment, I believe we'll get a full councillor. This will get across the line. It won't be a full unanimous decision, but I'm certain that we'll get a lot of councillors on board with this. Councillor Joe, I just want to reiterate, my friend, that I grew up at Sharks, I grew up at Geriatrics, I've surfed all those beachfronts along the front there. I'm very, very, very well aware of what the community is saying. This is not hitting the state government over with a big stick, and it's a very clear and concise amendment. It's certainly not clunky. It's about getting the message out very clearly, and I hope that once this goes through today, that your individual commentary will be about let's get this in the right direction, and I really do hope that, because my intentions are very, very clear on this. And I just seek your support today, councillors. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. All those in favour? Councillor Law, O'Prey, Hungerford, Jamieson, Johnston, Cox, Landsberg, Babarowski. Those opposed? Councillor Suarez, Dixon and Natoli. The motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. We move on to